All right, let's dive into what is, hands down, one of the most incredible conservation stories I've ever come across. We're talking about giants, we're talking about near extinction, and, well, a ridiculously bold plan to save them. And it all starts with this one simple question.
Now, that might sound like some kind of ancient riddle, right? But for the conservationists in the Galapagos, this was a very real, and I mean very heavy problem to solve. And the answer they came up with? It would literally change the fate of an entire species.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this wild solution, we've got to go back, way back. Picture this, the Galapagos Islands, this pristine, almost otherworldly paradise. This is the ancestral home of one of the most magnificent creatures on the entire planet, the giant tortoise.
And look, these are not your garden variety tortoises. No way. These guys are living, breathing relics. I mean, for millions of years, they just thrived here. They evolved into at least 14 different subspecies. And in a world with basically no major predators, they just got bigger and older. We're talking about the largest and longest living tortoises on Earth. Some of them weighed more than 400 kilograms and could live for well over a century. They were, without a doubt, the kings of these islands. But you know how these stories often go? That paradise wasn't going to last. The moment humans arrived, everything changed. It was the beginning of a catastrophic decline, a time when these ancient giants were pushed right to the very edge of extinction. And you can see just how quickly things got bad. It started out kind of small scale, back in the 17th century, pirates grabbing a few for food on their ships. But then the 1790s hit and the whaling industry showed up. That's when the exploitation just exploded. See, whalers realized something. These tortoises were the perfect live food source. They could literally survive for months on a ship without any food or water. So the pressure on their population just became absolutely immense, and it never let up.
And the sheer scale of this, it's just staggering. We're talking an estimated 200,000 tortoises taken from the islands before the 20th century even started. Just let that number sink in for a second. 200,000. Hundreds of thousands of these ancient giants just gone.
And if you think that was the end of it, you'd be wrong. The threats just kept piling on. When settlers arrived, they also hunted the tortoises that were left. They cleared out their habitats to make room for farms, and then, and this is a huge one, they brought in invasive species. Things like pigs, goats, and rats just took over the islands. They'd eat the tortoise eggs, gobble up the young tortoises, and destroy the plants the adult tortoises needed to survive. It was like a war on all fronts against a species that for millions of years had never even known a predator.
But then, just when things looked their bleakest, a glimmer of hope. People started to fight back with conservation efforts, and guess what? They worked. In fact, they worked so well that they accidentally created a brand new and really urgent problem. So back in 1989, this tortoise breeding center was established on Isabella Island. The idea was pretty simple, right? You hatch the eggs in a safe place, you raise the little guys until they're big and strong enough to make it in the wild. And man, did it work. It worked almost too well. Pretty soon they had a whole bunch of young tortoises all ready to go back to their ancestral homes. And this is where that new problem comes in. It created a total logistical nightmare. See, you can't release the tortoises when they're too young. We're talking under 5 years old or so, because their shells are still too soft. Predators like rats or pigs would just, well, you get the idea. But if you wait too long, they get way too big and heavy to carry across these incredibly difficult volcanic landscapes to where they need to go. So you have this really specific, super narrow window to get them back out there. For years, the only way to do it was the hard way. I want you to really picture this. Teams of people carrying these tortoises one by one on the backs, and they're hiking for weeks across sharp volcanic rock through thick, dense brush. I mean, it was absolutely heroic work, but it was painfully slow, it was dangerous, and there's just no way it could keep up with the sheer number of tortoises that were ready to go. So they needed a new idea, a bigger idea, a much, much bolder idea. And what they came up with, well, it was nothing short of revolutionary. It was time for Operation Tortoise Airlift. And get this brilliant plan wasn't dreamed up in some fancy high-tech lab. Nope, it was born around a table in a little cafe in November 2010. You had a park officer, a yacht captain, and a pilot, all just talking. And they asked this wild question: what if, instead of carrying them for weeks, we could just fly them home in a few minutes?
The logistics to pull this off were just insane. First step, they had to get a helicopter. Amazingly, the owners of a private yacht called the Wild Cloud generously offered theirs. Okay, check. Step 2, they had to design a custom crate that could safely carry 33 tortoises at a time. While that was happening, you had volunteers working around the clock getting hundreds of young tortoises ready. And at the same time, park wardens were literally being dropped into the middle of nowhere to hack landing sites out of the dense brush. The whole thing was this massive, coordinated 3-day sprint.
And it worked. The mission was a total success. But its impact was so much bigger than just moving animals from one place to another. This was a powerful, powerful symbol of hope. It felt like the tide was finally turning.
Imagine the scene. The helicopter touches down and they start opening these crates. One after another, these young tortoises are released. And for the very first time in their lives, they feel the volcanic soil of their true home under their feet. And they just immediately started to spread out, to explore, to eat, to just be tortoises right where they were always meant to be.
And then you get this moment, this absolutely perfect moment. One of the small juveniles, fresh off the helicopter, wanders over and comes face to face with a massive, century-old tortoise, a survivor that had made it through all the devastation. The young and the old, the past and the future, meeting right there. The quote from the source just says it all. The two stood side by side, a powerful symbol of the regeneration of an ancient species. Just incredible.
So yeah, the story of the flying tortoises is amazing, right? But it's so much more than just a cool story. It really shows us that sometimes the biggest challenges we face in conservation demand more than just passion. They demand wild creativity, real collaboration, and the guts to try something that sounds a little crazy. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other impossible problems out there could we solve if we just dared to think a little differently?